Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man so extreme, his baptism was a 14-foot belly flop into the baptismal tank. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who got fully immersed from on high.
I could see it in your eyes as soon as you started on that one, how excited you were.
Well, the reason is because that is a 100. Well, it wasn't your actual baptism, but that is.
It was a baptism.
It was a baptism of sorts. Yeah, this one was written in our church where Garrett was guest speaking on the 4th of July Sunday with our pastor, and
that was probably like one of those I just mentioned it, and people were like, "I want to hear that story."
Right, and so I immediately was like, "Okay, that's an intro." I literally wrote that immediately after hearing it in church. So, real quick, just tell everybody the
So we
highlights.
had this youth pastor. His name is Pastor Tad Tomaseski. He's an awesome guy, great youth pastor. He was totally psycho.
Not a usual list of qualities for great pastors.
He had been started with pastor on Strike Force in the power team.
Okay.
Very extreme guy. He's actually one of the guys who was a model for discipline in my life. When I first started working out in my 8th grade year, he was Teen Mr. Missouri. He was the entire time I knew him, he was shredded.
Right.
I never saw like Pastor Tad above like 8% body fat.
Jeez.
He was just always shredded.
Yeah.
Extremely disciplined. And when I first started to work out, he's like, "Oh, you want to work out with me? I work out at 4 a.m. And I remember in 8th grade, 4 a.m. for a workout, I just seemed like the most insane thing in the world to me, and he really did. But anyways, so Pastor Tab was pretty crazy, and he saw that I was pretty crazy. We did a lot of stuff. One other quick funny story, at summer camp one time with Pastor Tad, there was this big just think like a slip and slide, except it was like 30 feet wide on this big plywood deck that this camp had made, and there was a pool at the bottom. And so we just continually, there's a lot of people will tell you no to do things, but you don't say no, you don't tell the youth pastor no. And
right.
Dad was the one escalating. So the camp didn't really know what to say to us. And so we finally escalated to the point where Tad laid down and I stood on top of him and rode him like a surfboard down this thing. And I had braces at the time.
That's amazing.
I was only 13. I had braces. We were going so fast at the bottom. I flew, I face planted into the bottom of the pool, super hard, because the pool was deep enough to catch you sliding down.
Right.
Not when you're going twice the weight, because he was huge mass, and I was high because I'm standing up on top of him, and I just dove into the water, crushed my face into the bottom of this pool, and my braces broke. A bunch of the braces in my teeth broke off, and the wire broke and went out my lip.
Nice.
So that's one of many Pastor Tad stories. So now that you know how crazy we were together.
Amazing.
This one, I don't even remember what the message was, but he wanted me to, I want to say it was about faith. He was doing a message about faith, and he asked me if I would dive or belly flop off of a scissor lift 14 feet high into the baptismal.
And you were just
I was like, all right, sure. Well, when you look at the baptismal,
they're not very deep. This is
they're
like
not,
a clown stunt.
No, they're not very deep. And it's they're circular, and that thing looks 8 feet across. But what you don't see, unless, those who've been recently baptized, you'll remember this. Everyone else, let me paint the picture for you. It's not just a tub that is 4.5 feet deep all the way around. There's steps almost all the way into the center from both sides. I had a body width level of space to not just hit the steps. I did hit one of the steps with my shoulder.
Right.
Didn't feel very great. But I came up, I did do it. My angle was near perfect. I was a little head down coming into the hot tub. Hit the bottom pretty hard, but worked out great. So
I feel like he was put into your life for a good reason. Man. He helped engage your crazy.
There were a lot of people in my life who tried to throttle my crazy and pull it back. And he was hey, there were times where I said no to him. I was maybe I shouldn't do that. Might be a little far. Because he was always the guy who's well, what if you did this?
Hey, it'd be really awesome. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that rabbit trail as much as I did. You were getting hurt a lot, as I understand from talking to your parents. So getting your braces out the side of your lip, no big deal, right?
I didn't go home from camp for that. We just, went on through, went to the orthodontist when I got home.
Yeah, dude, rub some dirt on it. You'll be fine. Anyways, before we get into today's episode, which is how to be a great friend, this episode's awesome.
Really glad we're doing this episode.
Me too. I'm just going to say this up front because I feel like the catalyst for this was I just feel like a lot of people don't know how to be great friends, and it's something that's missing so much in our society.
I think all of us should want to have better relationships. So at the very least, even if you have great relationships in your life, you should want those to stay great relationships. And how can I make them better relationships? Is there anything I don't know about having a great relationship? And I'm sure for plenty of our listeners, this is something that they want very much in their life. So
I agree.
This is great for all of us.
Now,
a good reminder for you and I.
Yeah, well, especially for you. Anyways, speaking of of friendships and doing fun stuff together, we would like to cordially invite every listener out there. If you've been listening to our podcast for any length of time, you may remember that we attempted a 100-mile ultra last year. I say attempted because
it was a warm-up.
It was a warm-up. We got humbled. We found all the holes in our game.
We dipped our toe in the water.
Oof, man, what a painful dip it was as well. Well, we're going back this year. It's in Brazos Bend, which, if you don't know where that is, and I'm guessing that's everybody, it's just outside Houston, Texas, okay? So it's December 2nd and 3rd. What we're inviting you to do is come join us. You do not have to run 100 miles. But
what's the shortest run you can do?
You can do a half marathon. You can do a half marathon, a full marathon, a 50-miler, or a 100-miler.
And if I remember right, they all started
different times.
Different times, but it was that same morning.
Yeah.
Like we started at like 5 a.m. or something like that, and then the marathons and
I think we were 6.
halves,
yeah.
They started at like 8 and 9.
It was very pleasant.
So you could come out, hang out with us in the morning.
Yeah.
Watch us start. Run a half marathon, run a marathon. They even they have a 50 as well if you want to push yourself but don't want to do the 100, and then do that and then hang out, go back to your hotel, clean up, and come back and watch us finish.
Yeah, and or just hang around in the camp. What I will say,
it was fun hanging out in the camp.
It was, and the day before as well. Like we met up, we hung out with everybody. We ate dinner together, and like that's gonna be the same thing. Depending on how many people come, it could be we might have to find some place that can hold us all. But the point is, it's gonna be get with a bunch of like-minded people. Steve Weatherford's gonna be down there. I know he's bringing a big group.
He's inviting a big group as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So what I would say is, look, if you're like, I hate running, I don't want to do this. Great, do the half marathon. Just choose your hard. This is an opportunity for you to have a level of difficulty. And what I will say is, if you do decide to run even a marathon, you would be joining the 0.17% of the entire world's population of 7.2 billion people that have finished a marathon. I can't believe it's that low. I also looked up, just because I was curious, for the 100-miler. There was 10,282 finishes in North America of ultra marathons last year of a 100-mile distance. So they had 224 events, and the average finisher, there's 45 people that finish each event. You think about how small of a class you're going to be in.
It's a small group of people.
Yeah, if you run an ultra, like a 100-mile ultra, man, like
one of 10,000 in a year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so looking forward to being one of those people.
I am, and I know a lot of you would like to meet us or are looking for a good reason to link up with us. This is one of those opportunities.
Yeah, and meet some like-minded people. I promise you there'll be a bunch of growth-minded people who love Jesus and are doing something, choosing to push themselves. All right, G, let's get down with it. But before we do, speaking of 100, we were very grateful because we kicked off Mindset Mastery just this past Thursday with over 100 people.
I'm honored, humbled. Thank you to everyone who is an Impossible Life listener who jumped into Mindset Mastery with us. Nick and I mean, really, we're just so grateful for you guys. Nick and I put this together starting back in March. We had just an all day and push this thing and put it together. What is the mindset that we want to help people build? And then here we are in July. We just went live, last week with over 110 participants. Just to start, this is at the very beginning. It's the first thing we've done. And again, just very honored and grateful for all of you who've done this with us.
Yeah, cannot say thank you enough. It was, we were, I don't know if I've ever had that much energy at 4:30 in the morning when I woke up to come do this thing. I was very excited.
I didn't want to go to sleep the night before. I was very excited.
It was awesome. I actually woke up way too early that day.
Well, we just wanted to say thank you to all of you guys, but also for anyone else who still wants to join in, you can.
Yeah, it's all the time thing. And you could come in and catch right up by watching the replay of the call. So if you're interested, theimpossible.life is the place to go.
If you are still on the fence, I'm not going to say why, but you may want to consider joining soon. I'll just leave it at that.
Ooh, cliffhanger. Anyways, let's get into this. So how to be a great friend, G. So this is one of the most interesting studies I've ever heard of, and it was done by Harvard. So they did a study that's almost 80 years old. In 1938, they began tracking the health of 268 Harvard sophomores during the Great Depression. What's really interesting is some of the original cohort that was recruited was John F. Kennedy. May have heard of him.
Wow.
The Washington Post editor, Ben Bradley. What happened was during the study, they started then tracking their offspring as well. So it ended up expanding into a total of 1,300 people that they followed for an extended period of time. And what they were looking for was they were really just trying to find what dictates quality of life. So during this entire thing, they looked at all sorts of things. They looked at their health trajectories. They looked at their failures, their wins, and their careers and their marriage. And they looked at all these different things that they asked them. Not really quantifiable data, but very much, So anyways, what they found at the end is that the relationships and how happy we are in our relationships had a huge impact on health. What it kind of sums up is the quality of your life is very, very, very much tied to the quality of your relationships.
Absolutely. We actually, that's what we were talking about as we were planning this episode, is how much the quality of your relationships impacts your quality of life. I had two people in my life really model not just great quality of life, but great quality of relationship.
Before you tell that story, I'm going to interrupt you because, that's my thing now. And
watch it.
Yeah. But the question I want to ask people, because Garrett's about to share something really powerful with you guys, but I want you to just ask yourself before he tells you this, where did you learn friendship? Because one of the things that I'm so fascinated by is how much we don't know what we don't know. And we all have these reference experiences and things that we take for granted that this is just what friends do. I saw a cool movie, whatever.
The primary lid lifter, or the most obvious lid lifter for most people's lives, in any situation, is when they see someone else do it.
Yes.
Right? Like the best example is the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile.
Mm-hmm.
But in anything in life, when you get around people doing stuff that you've never done, it becomes possible for you.
Yes.
You see how it can be done.
And just if you don't know the Roger Bannister reference, nobody had broken the 4-minute mile, and he finally did it. And in that same year, 37 other people did it.
Yeah, whenever people had been saying it's impossible,
Yes.
everyone had been trying for a long time, it can't be done. One person doesn't, 37 other people do it the same year.
Incredible. All right, so with that reference in mind, G, what does friendship look like? Well, how do I think about it?
Yeah,
well,
I've said this before. I feel incredibly privileged because I've had so many lid lifters in my life. I've had so many people around me who have shown me things that I know a lot of other people aren't born with, that they don't get to see. My dad and Pastor Keith, my dad's best friend, and Pastor Keith, who's on this talked about on this podcast all the time, who we recently had as a guest. If you haven't yet listened to the episode, actually broken into 2 parts with Pastor Keith as a guest, that is an absolute must listen.
Yeah.
Go back and listen. I mean, just wisdom the entire time.
Yeah.
You understand, why we quote him often, and really I'm very much a product of his thinking and teaching. But my dad and Pastor Keith have been best friends for over 40 years. And that's not just like, hey, we're buddies.
Right.
I've watched so many of the lessons I've learned on friendship and relationship. I've learned by watching my dad and Pastor Keith, and watching Pastor Keith with my dad. They're very different in certain ways, but they're also very aligned in certain ways. And really, if I could just boil down to the nucleus of their relationship, it's 2 men who have committed themselves to each other and says, like, no matter what, I'm for you.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, their relationship is based upon, well, we live in the same area, we do the same things, we go to, our kids play the same sports, or even, we like the same things, or even for some people, you start to have shared values, and that's special. But it's a different type of relationship when you connect with someone on a deep, deep level where you say, no matter what, I'm for you.
Yeah.
There's few types of people in your life that you'll have that level of relationship with. If you're married, this is the type of relationship that a marriage should be.
Correct.
Like that, no matter what, I'm for you. Wherever you go, whatever you do, I'm for you. That doesn't mean you won't encourage them, help keep them out of the ditch in life. Like that's a deep relationship, but at the deepest level, you are completely for them. And it's really what's called a covenant type of relationship.
Yeah.
Like where we see this in the Bible. One of the best examples is David and Jonathan, right? Jonathan was for David, even when being for David wasn't for Jonathan, right? Loved David even when it was not for his benefit. And a lot of people, for them, relationship is only, they only want to be in the relationship as long as it's mutually beneficial. As long as this relationship is benefiting me, I'll value this relationship. But at the deepest level, an intimate relationship is when you love someone so much, you care for them so much that you're for them no matter what.
Yeah.
And I got to watch my dad and Pastor Keith really model that for me, which I think is the highest level of a type of friendship. And also both of them have great quality of life because of that. Like we said, quality of relationships will reflect quality of life. And because both of them had this very deep, high quality friendship, I was able to learn things, which we'll get into further on this episode. I was able to learn some things of this is what a great friendship looks like.
Yeah. I do want you to reference some of those things. I feel like we could go through all sorts of examples that I know of, and you will know way more, but we'll just come back to those. So before we even get into what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we have some action steps for you for how to be a great friend, but we want to help you understand as much as possible and give you a template for success in friendship.
I just want to mention it again. This, I had my dad and Pastor Keith lift the lid for me on what a great relationship looks like. What I hope this episode will be for so many people is that it'll lift the lid for them on their relationships, right? Being exposed to new things is difficult sometimes, but I hope that this podcast can be a level of exposure for you, that it'll lift your level of thinking, because what Nick and I want everyone who's listening to this podcast to grow. Whoever is listening to this, I want you to have better relationships, right? And you could be like, well, my relationship, I have good relationships, right? Don't be like offended by that. Like, I want you to have more. I want things in your life to be better. If you're listening to this podcast, I want you to have more wisdom. I want you to have more quality of life. I want you to have more peace. I want you to have more strength, right? So this is for our benefit. And what this increasing your level of awareness around a relationship, it may bring some conflict into your life. It may put you in a position where, like, man, I thought I had really deep relationships, but maybe I don't. Or maybe you're in a place where you think, like, I know I don't have deep relationships, and I want to know how to have that. This is going to help you in both of those places.
Yeah, no, that's very well said, G. So the very first thing, and we don't have a sound effect for him. We do want to have him on the podcast.
We need to have a sound
effect. This is
effect.
a Josh Kraft quote. I don't want to give him a. There's a few sounds on here that we never use, and I don't want to do that because I love Josh, and none of these sound effects would be.
You can use the machine gun for Josh because that's what he does.
Josh Kraft quote. He says, "Some friends are for a season, some are for a reason, and some are for a lifetime." And that quote is so powerful. Some friends are for a season, some are for a reason, some are for a lifetime. Now, you may have heard that quote before and didn't know who it was from. Yeah, it's Josh's. Even he is like, did I really say that? Yes, you did, Josh. Your dad tells the story very well. But the reason I say that before you even understand things, so I remember I'm a loyal person. So as a kid, I was like, man, these friends that I have, we're gonna be friends for life.
Yeah.
And that's how I enter into every friendship. Is I never enter into a friendship thinking like, oh, this will be cool for 6 months, or we'll see what they can get me, what I can get out of it, and then I'll walk away. I'm not wired like that. I'm just not wired like that at all. And this is really difficult, man. Like, what does this mean? So some friends are for a season. This one hurt. When I moved to Texas, part of the reason why we moved to Texas from California is because I realized that a lot of the friendships that I would have told you are my best friends just didn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Truthfully, that we had started to grow apart, and in some cases, people had very intentionally ended the friendships with us because as the country got more polarized, I'll just say that we didn't fit in California, and they decided that was enough reason to just completely cut us off and not be our friends. That hurts, man.
Yeah.
People that you've known since the time you were like, teenager.
Kind of change. It shatters your worldview a little bit. Like, man, I thought this relationship meant more than it did.
Yeah, and I think the toughest one is friends for a reason.
Yeah.
Because like I said, sometimes I've had some people that did some amazing things for me, and in my mind, I'm like, man, I owe these people. I want to honor them.
Let me just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, please do.
Just the friends for a reason thing. That's not the deep things that we want to get into on this podcast, but this just may be for somebody. Like, I know specifically for Nick, he had some friends for a reason that helped him get here, helped him get to elevate life. You also, I'm talking to you listening, and you may be a friend for a reason to somebody, right? Like, maybe God put you in a place where, like, you're being a friend to somebody, and you thought that just like Nick was a great friend to some of his childhood friends, and he thought, like, man, this is going to mean more, this is going to be more. That was actually a God orchestrated relationship where you get to have helped that person along. There's some people who were Nick's friends, right, who helped Nick get to Frisco, helped Nick get to our church, helped Nick get to him and I being in relationship together. So just understand that, like, the way that you do relationships, sometimes God's working through you, and we don't always see everything.
That's good.
But the friend for a reason thing, it's a part of life. But what you should do, no matter what, don't always try to qualify a relationship. Well, I don't know, what kind of person is this? Like, is this a friend for a reason person? Is this a friend for a season person? Maybe I don't want to get too close. You just be who you are.
Yeah.
Right. Like Nick is talking about how Nick is a loyal person, and he commits himself to people, right? He was committed to the people that he was friends with as a child. They may not have felt the same way. Maybe they did, but who Nick is because of who Nick is, right? So when you're in a relationship, be who you are, bring the best of yourself, and you will see over time Maybe it's for a reason, maybe it's for a season, maybe it's for a lifetime. But what you don't want to do is maybe this is somebody that's supposed to be in your life for a long time or forever, and you're like, no, they're just a reason friend.
Correct.
Don't try to judge those things or qualify those things.
Yeah, you won't know until it's afterwards, because like I didn't know any of these things until after the fact. And you're right, you still have to show up, because you can either miss out on something really great, or you can try and force something that's not there.
Well, like one of my life philosophies is play your part.
Right.
Like, and like really see the value of getting to play your part very well. And when you won't know it, but maybe you're a friend for a reason to somebody, and play that part really well so that you can help send them on to their next.
Yeah. And the whole point we want to make is just to hopefully give you a little bit more understanding. All friendships don't last forever, and that's okay. Like, truthfully, I think that is a God design, and like you said, for friends for a reason, that's just the way it is.
Not all friendships are covenant relationships.
Correct.
Not all friendships are a marriage where they're supposed to last for forever.
Yeah, very good. All right, well, Garrett said something when we were going through here, and I was like, man, that's too good. We got to share this. You talked about friendship as a mirror.
Well, marriage is a mirror, right? And marriage is the first really templated relationship that God gives us. And friendships are mirrors in the same way.
All right.
Like, marriage is just more of a mirror because you spend so much time with that person, right? But friendship is a mirror in that you get to see yourself in that person, right? And here's like really one of the things that people want out of all relationships is they want to be understood.
Yes.
Right? Like early on in Nick and I's relationship, I would say Nick opened the door to relate to us having relationship. One, because, he showed his character to me, he showed his values to me. When I was first coaching him, and the way that he handled himself, the way that he did things, but also Nick really understood who I was. And it's not like I'm in some insecure bubble, but a lot of people don't understand me, and I'm totally okay with that. But Nick's someone who understood me very well. And so that also opened the door for us to have relationship. What you want in a relationship is to understand the other person and to be understood really well. And so that's how I say that friendship is a mirror, right? What you're looking for is you want to know more of who you are. We're all seeking to understand, who am I, right? And we are who God says we are, and we're trying to understand that. Relationships are one of the things that reveal to us who we are. So you want someone who understands you, who can help reveal to you who you are.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of great quotes about you'll attract who you are, and you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it is kind of interesting because you think, oh, well, I need to go seek out better people. Well, here's the thing. If you just try and make all these aspirational friendships, if you're not that type of person, you're going to fall short, because like you said, it is a mirror. And like, no one's going to want to look in the mirror and see an image that doesn't reflect what they think they are, right? So kind of an interesting insight into what you just said. Now, we always like to, on The Impossible Life, go look at the inverse as well, G. We don't just go with what's obvious. So here's a few friendship killers, because we're going to tell you how to be a great friend. We're going to give you some framework, but here's a few things that you need to be aware of that will absolutely destroy your friendship.
What'll kill a friendship, and this is for anybody, right? Because this builds off of what we just said, that you want to be understood, and you want to understand the other person, you want to be able to see who you are in that person. What'll kill a friendship is a lack of authenticity.
Yes.
Right? You need to know who you are, and you need to know what you bring. If you remember on Winning Philosophy, we talked about this, where it's like, this is the criteria where I'm designed to win. This is my game. This is where I win. Like an investment thesis, like these are the type of investments that we're very good at. Investments that don't fit this model, we don't want them, right? You're a really great friend when you really know who you are and you know what you bring.
Yes.
That's what's going to bring so much value to a relationship. But the other side of that is you're pretending to be something that you're not, or sometimes it can be genuine, but you just don't know who you are. And that also doesn't help the relationship. It doesn't help the other person understand who they are. And this is why it's not necessarily that it's a friendship killer, but authenticity in itself is what builds a great relationship. Think about relationships you had as a child, right? And I made this example to Nick of, my daughter and his son playing together. At best, they have a low level type of friendship, even though they really enjoy playing together. And the reason they don't have a deep relationship is because at 2.5 years old and 3.5 years old, they don't really know who they are.
Right.
When you're 15 years old, you thought you would. For a lot of us, right, the people who were our friends when we were 15, we thought they were going to be our best friends for life. But at 15, we didn't really know who we were that much.
Yeah.
Right. So the more you know who you are, the more you can bring into a relationship.
Yeah, that's so good, G. I would say another thing that really kills friendship is selfishness. I mean, guaranteed, if you're a person who's focused all on yourself, it's going to be very hard for you to be the type of person that's going to give and be able to think of someone else. And who, I mean, honestly, who really goes, you know what I love being around? I love being around selfish people. That's just so much fun. It's just, you will in guaranteed destroy your relationship.
And so just on selfishness in a relationship, it's not that the most selfish people in a relationship are the people who would also say, well, I don't want the relationship to just be about you. Right? And that's not like in Nick and I's relationship. The relationship's not about Nick. The relationship's not about me. Nick and I have a relationship, but our relationship is about some of the things that we do together.
Right.
This podcast, Mighty Men, advancing the kingdom of God, right? All the things that Nick and I get to do together. Those are the things that our relationship is about. So a selfish relationship is also comes into play where people don't have a common mission.
Yeah, very good, Gene. We're going to get more into that. Now, one of the other things, and this is an interesting one, core values clash will kill a lot of relationships. And you gave a great example that I want you to give again about criminals, because people will be like, well, I don't really, what do you mean core values crash? I would hope that everybody has core values.
If you've listened to our core values episode, Nick will tell you which episode.
No, I won't. I'll tell you to go to theimpossible.life/podcast and look it up yourself. My dad was looking it up, and he's not even tech savvy. So,
That's awesome.
Get no excuses.
You're awesome, Bobby.
He is.
No matter who you are, you have core values, right? Some people know theirs really well, and they've designed their life around their core values. But whoever you are, you have core values. Even people who don't think they have core values, you have a set of values that you live by. And so I said, like, take people who are criminals. People, it's like, man, those people don't have values. Everyone has some type of value. And so you could take some criminal, like people who like rob and steal from people, and the people are like, it's not hurting anybody. We're just stealing from banks or whatever. You could take, that type of criminal, and one of the people in that group might also hurt children, right? And the other people in that group are like, hey, you do what?
Yeah.
Like that really breaks their values. At any level, right? Whether it's at like the lowest level, like people who don't have any values, or at the highest level, alignment between your values in a relationship is what's going to strengthen a relationship. Yeah. And when you don't have strong values, or you don't have shared values, there's going to be gaps which will eventually break a relationship.
Yeah. And by the way, I would recommend, we released on February 17th, 2022, a podcast on alignments. I would highly recommend listening to that, because alignments are different than what we're talking about right now. They come into this at a certain level, but I just want to put that in there. You can look it up on theimpossible.life/podcast and find it for yourself. But before we move on, the very last one, and I think this is probably one of the more common ones, is scorekeeping. If you want to kill a relationship, be the type of person that gets offended and keeps track of score.
Scorekeeping. This is also bad in marriages, right?
Is it ever good, G? Honestly,
no, it's not.
I can't think of one.
Well, this is what I said to Nick when we were planning out the podcast, was that God did not design any relationship that way.
Right.
God's given us the template for every type of relationship, right? The father-son relationship, the marriage, the brotherhood. And in all of these relationships, there's someone who's a leader. And in all of these relationships, it's not about one person.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There's transcendent values, and there's not scorekeeping. Scorekeeping is where you make a relationship transactional. Like, hey, Nick, I did this for you. Why haven't you done these things for me? Hey, how come I'm always the one calling you? How come I'm always the one initiating with you? That transactional relationship, it'll also make you, that scorekeeping, what people who scorekeep do, by the way, is they only scorekeep the boards that they're winning on.
Exactly.
Right? Because they're aware of all the areas where they're scoring more points, but they're also not aware of the areas of maybe their friend or their spouse's strengths that they're scoring a lot more points than them. It's a scoreboard that they're not paying attention to. Right? You need to have the mindset of, hey, I'm going to bring me. I'm going to be who I am, right? And it's not about scorekeeping. It's about shared values. It's about shared mission. It's about a lot of things we're going to get to in a minute. But scorekeeping will kill a relationship.
Right. Very good. And like I said, if you're a scorekeeper, you're probably a person who gets offended a lot. And that is also a great way to kill relationships, is just be a person who takes offense at a lot of things.
I did this for them. How come they didn't do that for me? I came to their party. I gave them this. I did these things. They're not doing the same things for me.
They just don't value us the way we value them. We just, we need to find friends that actually value us. Great. There's a little bit of selfishness and scorekeeping. Ring it up. Man, we need ring it up. Anyways, I just want to do that. Sorry, Tony, if you're listening, we didn't mean to use your sound. How cool would that be if Tony Robbins listened to our podcast? Anyways, okay, we are going to go through giving you the framework now, this is the friendship pyramid. And we're going to refer back to this, because not only are we going to tell you how to be a great friend, we're going to tell you where to find great friends. Man, and that's one of the biggest, most difficult things. There is a friendship pyramid. There's been a lot of research. You can Google friendship pyramid. They all kind of boil down to the same thing. And there's 4 levels of friendship in the friendship pyramid. The 5th level would be strangers, which is obviously not a friend. So level 4, this is the most outside, is an acquaintance. This is someone that you have occasional contact with, very general knowledge, and you talk about general knowledge. Number 3, you move into casual friends. And this is the most common type of quote-unquote friendship. You have common interests and activities. You meet more frequently than acquaintances, and you're not really serious emotionally. You know, these are the guys, I like sports. You like sports. Let's be friends. This is most people, and they don't get past this, unfortunately. Now, 2 is when you become close friends. At level 2, you share similar values, ideals, and worldviews. You have mutual interests, life goals, and you work together to achieve goals. You're connected in mind, body, and spirit. And sadly, most people never even get that far.
Yeah, and pay attention to that word connected.
Yes, very important. We're going to come back and highlight these, but we're giving this because it's an important framework.
So that's close friends.
That's close friends.
I mean, a lot of people just don't have any of those.
Yeah, and that's rough.
And we're gonna get into a little bit further the difference between casual and close friends, because a lot of people just have casual friends.
Yeah. Now, the top of the pyramid, it's also the smallest portion of the pyramid, which is important to note, is intimate friends. These are people who are committed to the development of each other's characters, their mutual responsibility of honesty, and they're connected soul to soul. This is that Jonathan David relationship that you talked about. And really, this should be marriage for everybody.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's not the case, as we see from.
And say the definition of intimate again.
Yeah, I didn't say what the definition. Oh, soul to soul. They're connected soul to soul.
Yeah,
that's the intimacy portion of that, and that is the top of it.
Different than connection in the intimate relationship is commitment.
Yeah, committed to the development of each other's characters.
And so that's to think about relationships that you have. How much commitment do you have to another person?
Yeah.
Right? Because that really, like, if you just want to throw relationships on a scale, how much commitment do I have?
Yeah.
Like in a marriage, there's a deep commitment. But if you are married and you have friends, like, this would be a good exercise for you. Just imagine a scale of commitment, right? And put your marriage on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then take that same scale of commitment and think about, where do some of my friendships fit on that scale?
That's good.
Right? Like, are they even anywhere on the level of commitment scale?
Yeah.
Right. And you could add value to this in your marriage, but just think about commitment in the sense of relationship. And that's just one good indicator of the value and quality of a relationship.
Yeah. And we're going to move on now to how to be a great friend, but I want to give people a little hack based on what you said. And I actually picked it up from your sister and brother-in-law, Josh and Brittany, who are some of our best friends as well. And what they do, because they understand that relationships are commitment, they literally get together at the beginning of the year and they identify 5 couples that they're committed to really being their core friends. And why do they do that? Because they know they're busy. They've got multiple businesses, same as me. Me and my wife do this as well. We've got 5 friendships, 5 couples that we're like, hey, these are our core 5. And we are committed to hanging out with those people regularly, because to try and do it otherwise, or to just see who's available, means that you'll spend time with a bunch of people. And at the end of the year, you'll be like, man, who are we close to? And you won't know. So you do have to be strategic about it. So
yeah, it's being intentional.
Yeah, hopefully that helps somebody out there. Now, it wouldn't be a podcast from the Impossible Life podcast without a quote from Pastor Keith Kraft. And he says, the best thing
one of my favorite quotes
you can give to the people you love is a healthy you.
Best gift you can give another person is a healthy you.
A healthy you. Now think about that, man, because some of the principles of friendship, and we're not going to go deep into this, but we did talk about this beforehand. One of the principles of friendship is health. I would say the 4 that I identified, and you agree with them, was health, proximity, truth, and honor.
And what is health, by the way? The definition of health is that you're free to complete your designed function.
Yes.
Right? So like that. A healthy friendship helps you be more of who you are, helps you have more connection and commitment with another person, helps you be like who you were created on the earth to be. Nick is helping me be who I was put on the earth to be. I'm helping Nick be who he was put on the earth to be. Our relationship has great connection and commitment, right? That's a healthy relationship. Where people want to get rid of relationships and abandon relationships is where they're not healthy relationships. Like, man, why is this so hard? Why are we in conflict? And we're going to get into some of these things that create that, but more importantly, how to have healthy relationships is the focus.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's do it. We've talked about it, G. So how to be a great friend. Step number 1, and I hope you write these down, because guess what? These are probably going to be the challenge for you when we're done. You've got to define your rules for friendship.
Yeah.
And within that, you're going to want to know what makes a friend. You're going to also want to decide how you're going to show up in that friendship no matter what. And you're also going to clearly define what the deal breakers are. Now, I will say for the defining the rules part of friendship, this is something that most people never think about. And I'll tell you where it came to conflict for me when I actually realized I needed to define this. So when I say define your rules, like what makes a friend? Because I found that I felt very lonely and isolated when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And I was like, man, I got no friends. And I was listening to a Tony Robbins podcast at the time, and he was like, oh, my good friend. And in my head, what I was telling myself is I was like, this guy's not Tony's good friend. He probably hardly knows this guy. Tony Robbins is full of crap. That's literally what I'm saying to myself. And suddenly I had this aha moment of like, well, maybe he defines friendship differently than you. And I was like, oh. And so I started thinking, I'm like, well, what do I define friendship as? And you know what I found? My idea of friendship was that they were people that you hung out with regularly, that you could just call up randomly and be like, hey, what are you doing? Nothing. Let's hang out. And like just really be impromptu with people.
Isn't it funny how people, like, you know, when you're single, you like your friends are the people that you go out on the weekends
100%.
with and stuff, but then you get married and your definition of friendship changes.
Well, that's exactly what it was. I realized that in my late 20s, early 30s, I can't remember exactly when it was, I had a definition of friendship that was from when I was 21.
So your late 20s and your early 30s is typically a hard season of friendships
Yes.
for people because your life is changing
Yes.
so much. You go from being single to being married, you go from being married to having kids,
Mhm.
and it really changes relationships for you. But just on this point of have rules for relationship, let me talk about rules for a second. I'm someone who's always been fascinated by rules. I've been, for the early part of my life, I was very fascinated with breaking rules. Because rules they're peculiar to me. They've always caught my attention. Understand that rules are not a natural part of life, right? Like there's principles in nature. There's not rules of nature. Rules are man's creation. Rules help you understand the difference between what you can do and what you shouldn't do. There's rules in games, right? Like there's sport.
Yeah.
Like sports is the thing where people think of rules, right? It's not that you can't go outside the bounds, but for the game, you can't.
Right.
We've set boundaries, right? And that's what rules help you do. But when you go into writing your rules for friendships, right, when you make a rule, and because in the military, especially the SEALs, special operations, it's a rule breaking force, right? Guerrilla war fighting. I just watched on the 4th of July, Lindsay and I were watching The Patriot, right?
Of course you were.
I love the story of how America beat the British literally by breaking the current rules of warfare. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you can't do that.
Yeah, you just march straight at each other. Yeah.
Right. Those are rules. It's not that you can't, but it was a designed game and they changed the game. Right. But rules help you understand what you should do, but that doesn't mean that you can't ever break the rules, especially when they're yours. You have to know why those rules exist
Yes.
so that you can know when to break them. The SEAL program designs what's called a thinking shooter. There are rules that are accepted, rules that should be followed, but when you're a thinking shooter, you understand why the rule exists and you know when it can be broken.
Right.
Right. So understand when you're making your rules for relationship, there's a lot that goes into that. To you understanding what type of relationships do I want to have? What are the things that I think makes a great relationship? Why do I want to have relationships in general? And you'll create some rules that guide you towards that. And it doesn't mean that you 100% have to always follow your rules, but if you're going to break them, you need to know why.
Right. Yeah.
I could talk about rules for a long time.
Yeah, we get it, man. You love rules. You love breaking them.
I
You hate
actually
them.
don't like rules. That's why I sought so much to understand them, because I thought like rules were controlling me, and really like growing up in school was where I disliked rules the most. But I realized the rules weren't for me. The rules were for the system. The rules were for the overall body, because the rules actually didn't help me very much. Right. So that's where in life I tried to understand, why do these rules exist? Because they're not actually helping me.
Yeah. He's got a glint in his eye if you're not watching on YouTube. It's fun. Anyways, but going back to this. So when you have those defined rules for what makes a friend and what a friendship consists of to you, you're going to find that it's very freeing, because in this case, because you've clearly defined it, you're not going to be in conflict with yourself going like, oh, this person's not a friend, and have all these false expectations on them. Also, this is a really important one. Don't just put it all on them. How are you going to show up? In my friendships, I'm going to show up as generous. I'm always going to be an encourager. I'm always going to be loyal. And I'm going to be somebody that's always there to support my friends and help them grow. Like, I know who I want to be. And I also have a very clear, one of my big I wants in life has to do with my relationships.
Make sure that these rules are more focused on you than they are on what, like if you want your life to go well, have higher expectations of yourself than what your expectations are of others.
Yeah.
Right. So don't create a list of like 10 rules for friendship.
Yes.
And these rules are all things that other people have to do.
100%. Yeah.
You won't have very many friends.
No, exactly. But now you also do need to have the deal breakers. And like we talked about, so what are deal breakers? For me, mission is something so important to my life.
Yeah.
So if someone decides to go off mission, and as if you listen to this podcast, you know, my mission is 100% around advancing the kingdom of God, helping people to know God and to be their best and highest for him. If somebody decides that they're like, hey, not that they would say it this clearly, but if they twist off and just decide to start living wild, I'm not going to be friends with that person anymore. I will go after them.
Doesn't mean I won't still love you in a Christ-like sense.
Right.
But we're not going to have a deep level of relationship.
Right. You're not going to be at my house all the time.
Caring for someone and having a relationship with someone are not the same thing.
Right. And you need to have those defined. I mean, they'll be different for every single person, but you should 100% have that defined, because otherwise you can end up staying in relationships that aren't good for you, aren't good for them, because you have some, I don't even know, idealistic sense of what friendship means, and you haven't actually put the boundaries in place.
Yeah.
So that was step one. Step two was, this is a big one for you, G, is know who you are and know what you bring. This is a massive filter. And when we talked about in Winning Philosophy, when you know who you are and what you bring, it's going to keep you from needing validation. You're not going to be the person looking for friendships to kind of prove who you are or to tell you who you are. And you're also going to understand people that you shouldn't be friends with. This is one that you really dove into.
It's a massive value to everyone around you and to your own life when you know who you are and you know what you bring.
Yeah.
Right. And so to any relationship, I know what I bring to that relationship, and I'm secure in who I am. And if a person doesn't like me, or if I'm not a benefit to them, I'm not bothered by that.
Right.
I know who I am. I like who I am. So if someone doesn't like me, that doesn't offend me, I'm not looking for a sense of assurance or a sense of fulfillment from other people. I'm looking to pour out my life on the altars that advance the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
I'm looking to align my life and have deep relationship with people who want to do the same thing. And I want to have a Christ-like impact on as many people as I can. Right. So if those things don't connect with you, if that's not for you, I'm not hurt by that.
Right.
And I know that. So it's very easy for me to move closer to being with the right people and not get stuck with the wrong people.
Yeah. Now, you heard Garrett just give you a very healthy perspective. And that's why we said that the best gift you can give to those that you love is a healthy you. And really, the healthier you get, the better quality of relationships you're going to have.
Deep these like the type of relationship my father and Pastor Keith have, which is an intimate relationship, or even to have, very close relationships. Like I said about Nick and I's children, they can't have a close relationship. They can't have an intimate relationship,
right,
because they're not mature enough yet. They're not developed enough yet. If you're at a place in your life and you're like, man, I just don't have any close relationships. I don't have any intimate relationships. I barely have any casual relationships. This is not a challenge to you. This is someone who cares about you, telling you in the healthy and most responsible way you need to mature.
Yeah.
Right. The more you mature, the deeper level of relationship that you can have. My daughter at less than 3 years old can't have, close or intimate relationships because she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know what value she has. The only types of relationships that she can have is let's have fun together.
Right.
And we have a relationship because we're in proximity. Literally, my child for, the next 10 years of her life is going to be friends with the people that I let her be friends with.
Right.
Right. It's based upon proximity.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, that's very good. But yeah, what it takes to be healthy is to truly work on yourself. That's why we're so big on personal growth and development, is like we have a responsibility to develop ourselves.
If you want to have great friends, be a great friend.
Yes.
Right? And it takes work to be a great friend.
It does. Yeah. Now, you said earlier that in every friendship, one person leads. So one of the things we would say is that if you want to be a great friend, be the leader. What does that mean, G, if you're the leader in the friendship?
It means you're so like in a marriage, God appointed men to be the leader of a marriage. That doesn't mean that women don't also carry their own weight, that women don't also have great responsibility. But somebody in every relationship is the leader. So you know what the leader's responsible for, at the end of the day, is responsible for all of it, right? If you want, like I said, if you want to have a great friend, be a great friend.
Yeah.
Be the leader in a relationship. Be the initiator. Look at someone and say, how much can I bless this person? Right? You know what'll, like, if you don't have any relationships in life, again, not meant to offend you, but this is an indicator for you. You're not as mature as you should be. There's more room for you to grow, which should excite you, by the way. Like, oh man, look how much greatness I have in front of me that I can grow, that I can mature, right? And we should all feel that way. But if you don't have very many friends in your life, that's what you should think is, man, I need to find someone that I can be a great friend to. How much can I help this other person? How much can I love on this other person? And as you develop them, it'll also show you things about you. One of the most developmental seasons in my life was when I was 25 years old, and I spent a lot of time mentoring tadpoles, right? Like trying to help these young men become SEALs. I was really focused on helping them become men. And in this season of my life where I was pouring out so much to help other people, I learned the most about myself.
Yeah, it's interesting how whenever they say, like, if you want to learn something well, teach it to someone else. And it's so true, man. So I hope you guys got that. And also, if you remember, we did a 4-part series on leadership. And what is the function of a leader, G? To bring order. So if you want to have great friendship, be the one that brings order to that friendship. Be the one that says, hey, let's hang out on this date. Let's get it in the calendar. Like, initiate.
And you're also the person that says, in that, why don't you initiate in that relationship? You don't have to make it weird, but
Yeah.
but say like, hey, I really want to, I'm trying to develop the relationships in my life, and I'd like to develop our relationship. This is what a relationship means to me.
Yeah.
This is the type of, and don't tell them what they need to be to you.
Right.
Say, this is the type of friend that I want to be to you.
Yeah. For that deal breaker thing that I mentioned earlier, like, I've had that conversation with my friends. If I ever twist off, here's what I want you to do. I told Garrett, I'd want you to come after me, but I would fully understand that if I did that, like, and I kept walking, it would be up to me. Like, when you have that kind of clarity, you can bring order. Now, this is an obvious step, but it would be step 4 now. Find someone who needs a friend, right? I mean, it seems really obvious, but that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for somebody else that's also seeking to be understood and is looking for a friend. Now, we're going to talk about where to find that, but I don't think we need to go super deep into find someone who needs a friend, but I just want to put it on there because it's sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, right?
Yeah.
G?
You're so focused on looking for people to be a friend to you that you don't see the people who need you to be a friend to them.
Yeah, that's very good. All right, now this is another one. Know your values and mission. Why do we say that, G? Well, here's the thing. If you have your values...
We already talked about values,
Yes.
right? And how everyone has them, and those are the things that'll bond a relationship or break a relationship. But know the missions that you're on. Know the missions that you're on. What makes missions so important? Well, really, it's an indicator of what your entire life's about. But also for all of us, your mission is where you'll spend the majority of your time. You'll spend the majority of your life working on your mission, right? And that's not like just mission in the military sense. Like, one of my primary missions that God put me on the earth to do is men's ministry and men's leadership, right? So that comes out in this podcast, that comes out in Mighty Men that Nick and I get to do together, that comes out in how much time I spend with Elevate Life Church. In every area of my life, I'm focused on men's leadership and men's ministry, right? So people who don't connect with or align with that mission, it's going to be very hard for me to have a relationship with them, because most of my life is focused on that mission.
Yeah, and we talked about that beforehand. There's some people, if they're like, hey, I'm not interested in religion or Christianity or Jesus or any of that stuff, like whatever, there's literally like the majority of my life I can't even share with them.
Yeah.
So how am I going to have a deep relationship with somebody that's like, oh, I don't believe in God? That's a killer for me, right? Like,
Yeah, because we talked about that. Close relationship have shared values and shared mission.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and let's start to get into this last piece that we really want to talk about, breaking down these different types of friendships, because for a lot of people, their relationships are just the people that they live near.
Yeah.
Right, like literally, and this is not meant to be offensive, but for a lot of people, their relationships are just the people who are their neighbors.
Yeah.
Right, like it be either the people that you work with, the people that were in your fraternity, or sorority, the people that live next to you, the people that live on your street. Those are my relationships, literally just the ones that were given to you.
Yeah.
Right, versus finding your relationships in another place. And so in the context of acquaintance, low-level relationship, casual relationship, close relationships, and intimate relationships, I would relate proximity, right? People that are near you. Proximity is really, most of those people are going to be in the acquaintance or casual relationship.
Right.
Because you're leaving it up to chance that these people who are just geographically near you would share your values and mission. Because there's nothing else that would make them share your values and mission other than chance.
Yeah. And so we're talking about where to find friends, because it's great that we've given you this framework for what you need to do personally, but it's like, okay, well, where do I get these people? Is there like a chat room I can go into, or do I join a networking group? These are the kind of things that people start thinking, but we're going to talk about this. These are the filters, and these are going to give you questions to ask yourself before you go in to really start being intentional about finding friendships. So like G said, most of our friendships, the acquaintance thing, it's like, oh, we happen to be in the same place at the same time. This is work relationships. This is, school. It's most of what you have as friendships for the first 18 to 22 years of your life. If you go to college.
Yeah, we're in the same grade. We're in the same class.
Just by matter of chance, we happen to be here. And hey, you like baseball. So do I. Let's be friends. And that's how it starts out. So no wonder most people don't really learn about how to really have great friendships, because all they ever learned was proximity and chance. So That's the acquaintance section. For casual, and this is where people get to be a little bit more intentional, and this is where most people's relationships top out. This is based entirely on interests, experiences, and convenience.
So one level above proximity, right?
Yeah.
We didn't just land next to each other by chance, but we landed next to each other because we're doing the same things that we like to do.
Our kids both play soccer here. Our kids both go to the same school. I work here. You work here. That's great. This is convenient, right? I'm going to see you every Tuesday at practice. We might as well be friends.
I think even more, you have like golf friends,
right?
Or
neighbors.
When I was in San Diego, I remember how close like the skydiving community is. Like a lot of people get into that, and that's like their family.
Yes.
Right. Like, so you can have friends who are of that, that you found them and they're close. They're your friend because you guys do the same thing. You have the same hobby. You play the same sport.
Now, these are well-meaning people. I don't want to knock on this.
People will measure that. Sometimes a lot of people measure the quality of their relationship based upon how much time they spend with a person and how that person makes them feel.
Correct.
Right. So if your life is just about a sport or your life is just about a hobby, you'll have people that you do a lot of that with. But the point to all of this is, if that's only what your relationship is, right? You may think like, I'm good. I love. And I'm not just like picking on the skydiving community. I love skydiving, and all my friends skydive, right? Here's the problem. If you don't have relationships that are based upon a shared value and shared mission, and that you don't ever get to a place of intimate relationship in your life, you have a lower quality of life than what is possible for you.
No, well said, G. Yeah, and that's the big thing. When we're talking about these casual, what Garrett said, the skydiving community, this proverbial skydiving community of friends that hang out all the time, they want the best for you. They think well of you. Hey, isn't this great? I feel so happy when I'm around them. The difference between casual and close is the connection, the level of connection, whenever you become truly emotionally invested in the other person. And that's what Garrett's saying that most people are missing out on. And he pretty much said it. He did say it. For close relationships, if you want to apply the filter for how do I find close relationships, that's why we said you need to know your values and your mission. This is where you're going to apply values, trajectory, and mission. And if you can get those things aligned with somebody else, man, the level of depth, because it becomes about something so much more than yourself at that point, right? You have a shared mission. I'm on shared trajectory. Like we both want to grow. Like
Nick and I aren't friends because I like soccer.
Okay, dude. Yeah, that's true.
Right?
No, that's true.
Like
You actually hate it.
Yeah. I don't hate it. Nick really likes soccer. I don't really like soccer. Right. But Nick and I are close and intimate friends because we have shared values.
Yes.
We have shared mission. Right? We get to spend so much time together because we're focused on the same things. We're living our lives the same way. We want our children to be around each other because we want our families to be the same.
Yeah.
Right? So it's based upon values and it's based upon mission. And also, Nick and I are both on an upward trajectory in our life. And I don't mean money, right? That's what most people would think when they think trajectory, which that is true. But really, we're on the same trajectory of personal growth and development. It's the conversation I have with my wife. Here's the one thing that'll make this not work.
Yeah.
If you don't want to keep growing, because for the rest of my life, I'm going to grow.
Yeah, and we share that. I've said this many times. The best day of my life, truly, the day I will be the best I'm ever going to be will be the last day I'm here, because I plan on getting better for the rest of my life. I really mean that. Now, one thing Garrett touched on there, and I want to say it, it's kind of hiding and it's obvious. Time is the factor in all of these things. Much like Garrett and I have used our own relationship, we didn't become close, intimate friends, in a week. We weren't just like, bro, like, let's be bros for life.
You were just some, California guy.
Okay, let's not go down that line, but it's true. Yeah, but it took time. I mean, we ran through this pyramid.
I will say, just look at pictures of Nick from when he moved here till now.
Whatever,
not taking any credit, but I'm taking some credit.
Okay, yeah, whatever. Your dad's the favorite. Your dad loves that so much, man. He always looks at me and reminds me of what I used to be.
Nick is so much more of a man than he used to be.
Okay. Dude, that's on the podcast now, bro. Like, that's supposed to be like private banter that you rip. He literally makes fun of me about this all the time, so you guys are getting it publicly. Anyways, but the point is it takes time. Like, we were at one point strangers, then we became acquaintances, then we became casual friends, right? And we've gone through this pyramid together, and I'm just going to highlight that for everybody. You're not going to necessarily know straight away, like, oh, this is someone that we have shared values, trajectory, and we're connected. It will take time, but if you apply that filter, it will eliminate a lot of people straight away.
Pastor Keith says time doesn't tell, time reveals.
Indeed.
Right, and that's the truth about time. There's some things that only time can show.
Yeah, very true. Now, the highest level is an intimate friends. This is a tough one to apply a filter to, because really you have such a limited space for this. Really, you should have this with your wife, right? Or your spouse.
Everyone, if you're married, you should have at least one intimate relationship.
Correct. And then after that, there's really, I mean, I don't know if you can put a cap on it, one or two. I mean, you don't have a lot of room for these types of friendships.
Well, and that's the point.
Yes.
Every relationship in your life can't be a commitment. You can have deep connections, right? And what you can, and this is like where you can get to the best place in your life, where you feel like you almost have a lot of intimate relationships. I feel like this is a place where I'm at in my life. I have a deep commitment to the mission of Mighty Men, right? I have a deep commitment to advancing the kingdom of God. And so when other people share that same commitment, we have like a pseudo intimate relationship. We're at the lowest level, we're very close.
Right.
Because when you're as committed to me, like the people that I was in the SEAL teams with, right? These are people that like, man, just me and them, I don't even like this guy. But we have a deep relationship because of our level of commitment to this job, right? And so you can have deep relationships from a deep commitment to mission and other people who are deeply committed to that mission as well.
Right.
Right. And then if you'll have that deep commitment with somebody, you'll find people that you just uniquely and in a special way align with, have shared values, you guys click, so to speak, and that can become a true intimate relationship in your life, where you make a commitment to that person, right? Like, I'm committed to you no matter what. I'm always going to be for you. I want the best for you. And that's a deep relationship. You can't have lots of commitments. Right. Just like I made this joke to Nick while we were preparing, like, think about trying to be married to multiple people, right? And I don't mean like in the sense of polygamy, right? I mean like actually try to have multiple marriages. It takes so much work just to, in a good way, but it takes so much work just to have one marriage, to stay committed to one person, to give your best to one person, all of the work that it takes to have a great marriage. You couldn't have multiple, correct, right? You would fail at all of them, right? So you can only have so many intimate friends where there's a level of commitment. Right. And there's a scale to that. It's not like you either are an intimate friend or you aren't an intimate friend. There's levels of intimate friend based upon levels of commitment.
But for that closest friendship, I mean, I don't know how many more times we could say the word commitment, but it truly is like a covenant relationship.
Yeah, that's why I would say on one end of the scale, it's a base level of commitment, and the highest level of commitment is a covenant, right? Like I would classify, because this friendship pyramid, I would put the covenant relationship in like a tiny little, the tip of the pyramid, 6 category. That's like a thimble at the top of the pyramid, right? Because you have levels of intimate relationship only to like a deep covenant relationship.
Now, covenant, just very briefly, covenant's not a word that's used very often.
No, it's not.
Marriage is a covenant. And if you think about your marriage, what do you have? You have vows, you have commitments, unconditional and conditional, like, hey, I'm going to stay with you for better or for worse, for richer or for poor. And it's very stated very clearly.
This is funny. Lindsay and I were joking about this the other day. When Pastor Keith did my wife and I's vows, when he did our vows, he said, for richer or for richer.
Boom. There you go. You got to love that, man. That's a nice positive vow. But seriously, think about that. You don't, just like Garrett said, you don't get married to more than one person. Having that kind of true covenant relationship with somebody is a very, very special thing, and it is a very limited thing. What I would say is that there are conditions to that, where it's like, hey, this is what we're committing to, and it takes a really, really healthy, mature person, because like your dad and Pastor Keith are very healthy, mature men, and that's why they've been able to be friends like that for 40 years. But they talked about, Pastor Keith tells a story. He went to your dad after he'd been married to Pastor Sheila for a while and said, hey, look, I think Pastor Sheila is going to stay with me for life, but I can't guarantee that. But let's you and I commit to each other now. And they have, and they've both stuck by that.
And that becomes something incredibly valuable over time.
Yes.
Over time. Because I've watched people see my dad and Pastor Keith and tell someone like, I'm going to make a covenant to you of relationship. Right. And in 2 years, 6 months, whatever, they break it. Right? That's something you build slowly over a long period of time. And then it becomes one of the most valuable things you have in your life.
Yeah.
There's some things that can only be built over time.
Very true. All right, we're going to wrap. This was a longer one, but it's such an important subject, man. We really hope this blesses you guys and helps you go out and create the kind of relationships that truly can be the sweetest thing in your life. Here's your challenge for me, and then, G, I'm going to let you add one as well. My challenge for you is go define your rules. Go define what friendship, what it means to be a friend to you. And I'm talking about get specific. Is it someone that you have to see all the time? Is it someone that has to live nearby? Is this a person, like, how do you expect this friend to show up for you? What makes a friend? And then more importantly, how are you going to show up for your friendship? What's the commitment that you're going to have to someone that's going to be your friend? And what are your deal breakers? That was step one. And I think that alone will help give a framework to your friendship that I'm guessing most people probably haven't spent a lot of time putting together.
Very, very good. I'll just say this, I wish for everyone to have great and deep relationships. Know why, take the time, think about it. Why are you a great friend? Why should people, why in every friendship that you're in, is it a better friendship because you're in it? Understand the things that you bring to a relationship.